Do you remember that wedding from a month ago? Yeah, like that one that you needed to start editing yesterday? But you also need to prep today for your wedding tomorrow, and you're leaving for your first vacation in forever on Monday. So what do? It seems that the only creative part of your edits are the excuses you're going to have to give your clients. We have the solution, Wedditor. Wedditor is a team of top wedding editors, project managers, and account coordinators that help us wedding filmmakers edit. They match the right editors with your style so you can spend your time where it matters most, on your business. Nick and I both use Wedditor, and we don't know how we would run our companies without them. It takes a team to build an amazing business, and you shouldn't try to do it all on your own. Head over to howtofilmweddings.com/Wedditor to help you free up your time so that you can focus on growing your brand. Be sure to use promo code HTFW for $50 off your first project. Wedditor, more than freelance, more than outsourcing.
Filmmaking in general has a lot, it's a team effort, it's collaborative. There is a lot to do. It's hard for one person to do everything. You don't have to edit. You don't. You don't have to shoot. If you don't want to shoot, you can be a wedding film editor these days, right? You can just edit. If you prefer the business aspect of it, start a studio. Focus more on the business, the management, the production management, building out a team. You still love film, but you don't have to do everything.
Hello and welcome to the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn. I'm joined by Mr. Deep Nuggets himself, Nick Miller. Mr. Deep Nuggets, how in the heck are you, my friend?
Oh man, I'm doing really good. I like that you called me Mr. Deep Nuggets. It's kind of a fun one.
Yeah, I got a package in the mail from someone today, and it said John Sticky Bun on it. So
It did. I wonder who sent that to you.
It was from you. No, but
it was
okay,
from me.
So there's so many good things going on, and
so many.
Like number one, we're about to be at Vision Quest in Austin.
Vision Quest. Yeah,
that's
just a couple weeks
soon.
away.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, so excited.
So pumped about that. Love me some Texas. Love me some Vision Quest. So that's coming. Pumped about that. I'm in a really funny mood. I'm in a really good mood because of the interview we just had with Wedditor. We've been talking about these guys with having this outsourcing company helping us do all these edits and different things, and brought them on as a sponsor last month. And we just wanted to get them on the podcast to talk about why they're different, talk about different editing strategies. Even if you're not hiring somebody to help you with edits, we just answered a ton of questions about things they see in trends that they're seeing, things that they don't see enough of in films. We talked to them about how they do everything Wedditor. It was a really awesome conversation.
Yeah, definitely enjoyed it. And one of the things I really appreciated specifically about Wedditor and Michael and Sarah and how they run everything is you can really hear his heart and how he feels about how they do marketing and how they talk to people. He's like, I will never cold call you. He actually has a little rant about that at the end about why he doesn't like it and that kind of stuff. We've all gotten Facebook messages from people all over the country, saying, hey, hi sir, I love your business. How much, I do this for editing or, whatever. And so it's really fresh approach to hear his view on that and how they're not doing that. If they know if you want an editor, you will find an editor and reach out for one. So loved hearing what they had to say about that specifically.
It was an awesome episode. So excited for you guys to hear from them. Let's jump into this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast.
Okay.
Well, awesome. We're so excited to have Michael and Sarah on the How to Film Weddings podcast. We've been talking about you guys for the last month. We've been begging you to come on. You're here. We're pumped. Why don't you do us a favor, guys? Introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit of how you got into weddings, all that good stuff.
All right. So hi, everybody. I'm Michael, the founder of Wedditor, and I launched Wedditor exactly 3 years ago in September 2016. Prior to that, I had actually only ever shot one wedding, so I do not come from the wedding film industry. I shot one wedding in 2011 for a friend. I said never again. It was a different industry back then. It's changed so much. When I got married and got my wedding film, that's kind of was the inspiration for Wedditor and what changed everything. I do come from a background in film, though. I started out doing a lot of early internet videos in the Silicon Valley in 2006 when all of that was new and young and exciting. So that's a little bit about me and where I come from and how Wedditor got started.
And how'd you get in touch with Sarah here? Sarah, tell us a little bit about you.
So I actually went to film school, and as soon as I graduated film school, I immediately landed a gig as a second shooter, shooting wedding films for a DC-based company. And actually the first day of my first wedding shoot, about halfway through the day, the cinematographer came up and said, "Hey, do you happen to edit wedding films?" And of course I hadn't, but you got to fake it till you make it. So I said, "Yeah, absolutely I do." And I've been editing wedding films ever since. And I was a freelance wedding film editor. I really love wedding films. I love the storytelling. I love that you can kind of put your own creative spin on it. And I actually just got really tired at one point of searching for clients. And I thought surely somebody had an outsourcing solution like photographers have for wedding photos. And I stumbled upon Wedditor and reached out to Michael.
Nice. And so what is your current role with Wedditor?
So I am the project lead, so every project that comes through, every film I'm personally reviewing, I'm going over filmmakers' portfolios, I'm kind of dissecting their style a little bit, studying up, and making sure that what we're producing from the very start is matching that.
Gotcha. And before we move on to a little bit of this conversation, you guys are not based in the same city. Where are you based right now? How's this work?
So the company was originally launched in San Francisco, which is where I was living at the time. I have since relocated to Las Vegas, which is where I am. But Wedditor is fully a remote team. Okay, cool. So we have Sarah, who is outside of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And then we've got Brooke. Brooke also helps with quality control, more for the high volume studios. She is from SoCal, but lives in North Carolina now. And then the other core member of our team is Jen. You both are familiar with her. Yep. Jen is actually based in the Philippines. And that works really well for us because we have clients in 7 countries and she's working while we're sleeping. So as you guys know, she kind of bookends the projects, makes sure that all the assets are uploaded, the briefs are filled out, and then she delivers all the, the versions and the masters to you. And then she can answer a lot of basic questions that may come in overnight. Because not only do we have clients in 7 countries, but as you guys know, in our industry, people work crazy hours. A lot of people love to edit at 3 a.m., right? Yeah. A lot of filmmakers are up late, so it's a 24-hour operation for us. So to be in those locations, East Coast clients love having Sarah because I'm waking up when they're having lunch.
Yes.
Right. And if we were running a business, they would just not work out if we didn't have somebody on the East Coast. So
no, that's really cool.
That's how we work.
That's awesome. So I want the listeners to know, this is not going to just be a podcast where we're just talking about what Wedditor can do for you. Nick and I both use Wedditor, and we'll talk about the services and things, of course, that you guys offer. But there are some really unique things that you can offer to our community, being experts when it comes to editing. And so we're going to talk about just questions that some of the filmmakers in our Facebook group have sent, just asking about ways to be better at editing or to stay focused, things like that. But before we jump into those questions, I really just, Nick and I have been really talking a lot about Wedditor in the groups and everything. So I just wanted to kind of give my experience so far with you all and how we came across you all, because I think it's really important when it comes to, this type of a service. And so the number one thing that I really wanted to throw out there is that you all never reached out to me. It wasn't something that you cold called me or emailed me or went through my website and I thought you were a new bride only to find out that you're trying to sell me something, which we all can relate. I mean, people in their cars are shaking their head, or on their jogs right now, they're shaking their head like, yep, this happens every day. And that was really important to us whenever we were talking with you all. In my company, Redeemed Productions, I had shot 16 of my 23 weddings between April and July. And it went from no backlog to an incredible amount of backlog. And so our story kind of goes, Nick and I were doing a mentor session with a guy named John, and he was talking about how he does a large number of weddings each year. And he just kind of in passing in our mentor session was like, yeah, I use this company, Wedditor. They're great. The price is great. They're really great at what they do. And so I just wrote down Wedditor and kept on with our mentor session. And then later that day, I reached out to you guys and, said, hey, I'm looking at doing some films. I didn't know if you had heard of our podcast, none of that. And so I was just like, I need help with editing. What would you charge? And that's how we got going. And from the very moment that you guys first responded until delivering now, I think my 3rd or 4th film at the time of this recording, the experience has been exactly what I would have hoped it could have been with any other editing company or, outsourcing and I just love the vibe from very beginning till now. It wasn't just like, yeah, send us your films. It wasn't, we spent time at the beginning, really getting to know each other, knowing my style. The first wedding that you guys edited, I told you I was going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and say, and I'm sure you guys have jokes around your office about, oh my goodness, John had 180 changes, but it was like that one frame I don't want in the shot, it was, and you guys were so kind to me, as somebody that wants to produce a high-end luxury wedding film, it has to be perfect. And so finding somebody that understands my vibe and all of that, that was so important to me. And then it was like, my goodness, these people could be a very big help to, our community. And so then we started talking about, sponsorships and different things like that. So from the very first moment with you guys, it's never been salesy. You guys have been very, the film's now the fourth one. I think I had like 20 little comments, which little comments as in like, I think there's something in the frame over there. It's like, you guys get my style now. And I feel like it's just an extension of my team. And I was using you and I was like, Nick, you've got to check these guys out. So I wanted, Nick, what was your experience whenever working with Wedditor as well?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, very, very similar. I was sitting there, I think from April to the end, or from like January to the end of May, I had filmed like 5 total weddings. But we have like 26 booked for the year. So that means, from June through the end of the year, we have over 20. So like, and now we're in a crazy fall. So it's just like building up and building up and building up. And I was like, man, I just need some help here. So after you talked to them and, we kind of got in touch, John, you said you should reach out. So I did. And I was pleasantly surprised how Michael responded back to me. And he was like, hey, can we hop on a phone? And I was like,
what is this phone you speak of?
Yeah. Who talks on the phone anymore? But, and I really enjoyed that because I have worked with editors in the past and like, just send me your stuff, give me a few notes and then we'll go from there. But Michael wanted to hop on the phone and talk and figure out kind of what my editing expectations are. One thing that I thought was really, really cool is he was like, I view this as a partnership moving forward, not hey, we're just going to do a one-off film whenever you just are really stressed or something like that.
Yeah, we don't view it as a gig for hire, as I like to say.
Not at all.
Right. And so, and in me and my thinking, I'm like, man, maybe if I can, raise my prices just enough to cover the cost of the edit. Because you were upfront in saying year one is definitely the toughest to do Wedditor because it's not like an expense that you accounted for. Mm-hmm. But once you kind of get into the process and get into the flow, then it's like you shoot a wedding, you can upload it on Monday, and then it's done in a few weeks and like you're set. And, I'm definitely thinking, man, that would be so amazing for my business. Think of all the other things that I could accomplish or free up time to be with my family or, whatever it may be to do this. And first film I got back, I was blown away because I had used other people, the random Facebook messages that we get, at 3 a.m. from people. And I was like, hey, sure, here's one, just give it a try. I basically had to re-edit the whole thing. Mm-hmm. This one, very first version was, I'd put it at 85% of the way there, like almost the way there, and then, one thing that I liked is you guys are kind of a, I don't know if build your own is the right word, but I was like, my wife is really into color correction and that's what she wants to do. So you're like, okay, fine. We'll give you, the edit back and we'll let her do the color correcting, and that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest. And, we emailed, the last couple of weeks, Michael, back and forth several times. I think that I have a problem like expressing what I want. And like, I think whenever I get something back, if I'm like, oh, that doesn't look okay, well, I know I'm getting it back to color correct it, so I'll just change it anyway. Like that was kind of my thought. Mm-hmm. And so I know that you were like, that doesn't, I think that gives us a disservice, like both of our sides a disservice. If you're telling us that we're doing a good job and you accept it, and then you go back and edit it because now we're producing work for you that isn't what you expect. And then you're having to end up coming in and doing some work that, we should have done in the first place. And so we had that conversation. And so now I'm learning, okay, it might sound harsh, like, hey, I don't like this, change this kind of thing. But in the long run, and I know your editors don't take it as harsh, they're in this world, they get it. They don't take it as harsh.
We frame it for them in a nice way. That's right. One of the nice things I think about when you work with a company and you have that team and you have that separation between the editor, because we've all worked, we're all creatives. Creatives can be hot-blooded, especially when they poured their heart and soul into an edit only to be told by somebody else that this is, there needs to be changes, right? Even sometimes they'll edit, well, what do you mean it's perfect this way? So that separation really helps. Sarah and I and Brooke, we're much less likely to get emotional over it. We will try to be as objective as possible.
Right.
And then we make sure we frame it, and we have a great partnership and relationship with our editors that they've learned to trust us.
Yeah. And just to hop in there, if I can, even from my perspective, when I was editing freelance, it was always a little odd because, I'd always have clients that were generally just always happy. They would just take my work, and I could kind of sense that when they wanted a change from me, they were very hesitant to ask that. And what it kind of led to is, they weren't getting exactly what they wanted. I wouldn't, really push for it because I didn't even quite feel comfortable myself, really like pushing for more critique. So it was kind of just like, it was working out, but it wasn't all that it could be. And even, some of the things, John, you're talking about, all the notes you left on the first project, that's the kind of feedback when you're an editor that you love, because it helps you see things from a different perspective, where if you're just working by yourself and clients are just telling you, yeah, it's great, you never really feel like you're learning or evolving from a freelance perspective. So having this kind of team and collaborative dynamic, it's really helpful for an editor as well.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a thought. It was a good one too. Fell out.
Come back to him. Come back to him.
Come back to me.
What I would say is that in any creative partnership, you have to speak up. Right? Yeah, you really have to speak up. And it is difficult. A lot of us have difficulty with that, right? If I tend to, in a group of people, I tend to be the quiet guy for some reason. I'm much better one-on-one with somebody. Put me on a stage with a rehearsed speech in front of 300 people, no problem. But I really just kind of ball up if I'm in a room around a table with 10 people, and I don't speak up. But in this process, it's really important for every filmmaker to know that regardless of who you're working with, if it's a second shooter, you have to have communication with them. If you're working with an editor, whether they're in-house or they're freelance or a team, you have to be able to speak up and just let them know, because you want to build a long-term partnership, and long-term partnerships are the cornerstones are communication and transparency.
Yeah, and I think too, on the whole partnership side of things, like, How to Film Weddings, we started the podcast a year ago. We weren't expecting people to even want to partner with us for 2 years. I remember Nick and I at the beginning being like, 2 years of putting in work before anybody's even going to listen to this thing. And like, as we're building this podcast and then people, reaching out, we've had several companies that do what you do reach out and say, we want to promote ourselves to the How to Film Weddings community. And it wasn't a good fit. And I want to really throw that out there, that like, we as people are not real salesy. We care about relationship and partnership. And so like, that is one of the main reasons why we were like, yes, Wedditor should be somebody that we help promote to our community. So we don't take that lightly, Nick and I, for sure. And so, having you guys on here as kind of experts, on multiple podcasts coming up, that's kind of the idea with this. And I'd love to jump in to kind of, so if you think about it, if you're listening, these guys get to see a lot of films from a lot of different kinds of cultures and all over the world. And I'm sure there are a lot of things, because of the amount of weddings you get to edit, that you see that is kind of a common theme in weddings, or things that bug you, or, man, I wish the filmmaker would have done this, or and so I want to just kind of ask you, you edit a lot of footage. What is some of the stuff that just drives you bananas about filmmakers, what they're doing? What do you wish that we were doing better? What can we do better? Even if you're not hiring somebody to help you with your edits, what kinds of things would you recommend for us?
One of the things that we always say is just people neglect or overlook the importance of having that stationary camera during ceremony and these live formal events, even if you're solo shooting. And I know it's a little bit of a pain to set up, and it's one more thing to have to add into your day, but it just helps so much with coverage, and just having the ability to always kind of go back to that angle in a time of need and not have to worry about gaps in coverage, especially during the ceremony, is so important. So we wish filmmakers that are kind of getting into it more, even some seasoned ones, would take that stationary camera a little more seriously and pull it into play a little bit more. So that's, I think, probably the number one thing. I think
Makes
another
sense.
area would definitely be, and I just thought of this, is gimbals. I see a lot of second shooters that are out there breaking out that gimbal for the first time, and it's very clearly not balanced, and that is how they recorded the entire day. So make sure, especially to communicate with your second shooters about, that's on the wedding day is not the first time to be testing out new equipment. You should be, familiar and comfortable with what you're using when you're shooting.
Yeah.
Do you want to say that line again for the people in the back? Like that's something that we see all the time. Like new people, like, hey, what kind of this should I get? What kind of this should I get? And I'm like, have you mastered the monopod? Have you mastered the tripod? Nail the basics, and then go to more advanced stuff. So I appreciate that point.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing too in that category is people really neglect those the first half of the day establishing shots. I know it's, you're driving location, you just kind of want to hop in, say hello to everyone, kind of get your bearings together, but it's really important that you do get those establishing shots. They just help so much in the edit to have, just in case, and it really just helps tell the story. And it's something that we see a lot of those details. We see reception details a lot, but especially if the prep's at someone's house, it's really nice to include those shots.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a lot of people overshooting certain things, getting too much of one thing? Like, are they getting 50 shots of the cake and you only need one? Or like, what kinds of things shooting wise are you seeing?
So it tends to be that people, or filmmakers in general, they kind of struggle with photo shoots when the photographer is clearly leading them. They kind of just are taking those very stationary shots, and they're not really getting creative. And I heard some great advice at WPPI, which is if you're shooting photo shoots and the photographer is kind of, strong-arming the couple and directing them, not really giving you much time. If they're doing, really subtle movements or facial expressions, go in tighter on that shot. Make that work to your advantage. If they're doing a big dip or a twirl, you then go out wider, because obviously that action is going to carry through on a wide really nicely. Yeah. And in terms of undershooting, it's just those establishing and those little details, I think. But you are right. I do see a lot of cake shots. 10 times that cake.
There tends to be 5 times as much bride prep footage. I would say that's definitely a trend. We did hear from one client of ours that he tends to shoot a lot of bride prep footage, though, because he's just there, right? You just arrive. Typically, bride prep's the first thing you're shooting. He's warming up. He's trying to get comfortable with everybody. Yes, he's met the bride, but he hasn't met the bridesmaid, so he's going to be spending a lot of the time with for the day. So he does tend to shoot that. So there does tend to be a lot more bride prep for that, and then groom prep tends to be undershot, I would say.
I do that.
It would be, especially compared to the bride prep, there's definitely less, but it would be nice to see a little bit more groom prep, especially for the filmmakers that do like to include prep into their final films.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that there are a ton of things, with the shooters that, you're seeing different with different clients and things like that. But if you are listening, it is one of those things, you have to be paying attention to more than just the bride. When you get there, you have to giving yourself, shooting for the edit. We talk about that a lot on the podcast, just about you have to be thinking, oh, I haven't gotten any outside shots, even if you did start with the bride prep a little bit later, even if it's sunset time, you can go get some just shots of the venue or different things like that, just to give yourself, something to work with whenever you're editing. So, okay. I want to jump in to some of these questions we posted on our Facebook group. If you guys didn't know, we have a Facebook group. You're in it, but just search How to Film Weddings on Facebook. It's growing. There's 4,000 people in there now, which is hundreds of dozens, Nick. It's
hundreds of dozens.
It's incredible. Great community in there, and we've been just talking a lot about the edits and having you guys on. We posted in our group asking for some questions about editing, things like that. So I'd love to jump into a couple of those if Nick is cool with it.
Yeah, go for it. Let's do it.
Nick is cool with it. Okay, so the first question I wanted to jump on here is Zach Fada. He says, "How do you keep yourself on task when editing? Like, how are you managing your time both personally and business to ensure everything is getting done while not going crazy in the process? What are some tips for us to maybe stay on task?"
Establish a rhythm. It's all about consistency. Whatever that rhythm is, whether it's full 8-hour days, whether it's 4 to 5 hours a day, just establish that rhythm, be consistent with whatever works for you. There is not necessarily one right answer. I would say there are a few wrong answers. You don't want to be, if you're editing 16 hours consecutively, you're going to burn out. If you're editing 4 hours a day every fifth day, that project is not going to remain fresh in your mind, right? So if you can be consistent with whatever works for you, whether it's, let's just say 4 to 5 hours a day, right? That keeps you physically and mentally fresh. It keeps the project fresh in your mind, but it also means it's going to take you a number of days to finish it, which allows you to have breaks and step away and come back with fresh eyes. Generally, I think that's good. But again, some people find other things work better for them. So it's just establish what works best for you and be consistent with it and minimize interruptions. Interruptions are a killer for whatever you're doing in life, right? You want to get into that flow state where time and space disappear.
I love that
Nothing
place.
else matters. Yes, we all get in there. We all get into the zone, but then it gets interrupted. And anytime, even a simple task that gets interrupted can take 2 to 3 times as long to complete. That can be hard for some of us, right? If you work all day, you come home at night and your kids are excited to see you, you're going to have those interruptions. But whatever you can do to minimize them is incredibly important.
Yeah, and I know that with my watch and with my phones and with all the things that pop up on my computer, it's like you get into this zone and you're like, yes, I am an editing god. I'm great at this. This is great. And then it comes, and then it's like 28 minutes later, I've watched Peter McKinnon's new video. I've commented on 44 people's things on Facebook. Instagram has a post, and my film hasn't gone anywhere. And so I remember Nick saying a couple of months back, just like turning your Wi-Fi off while you're editing. Like that changed my life. And also just setting a timer. Like I'll set an hour timer because I can't sit at my desk all day. It would drive me crazy. So like setting a timer for an hour, turning off Wi-Fi, I usually get more done in that 1 hour than I do in an entire day without it. So anyway.
Yeah.
We know the time suck that is searching for the perfect song for your wedding film. MusicBed has spent years collaborating with artists, bands, and composers to make it easier than ever for anyone to find the right song for their video.
With amazing artists like Chapters, Tony Anderson, and The Light, The Heat, MusicBed is the best place for wedding videographers to get licensed music.
Their subscription service was a life changer for me, especially since all of their subscription music is pre-cleared for every social media platform: Facebook, Instagram, Love Stories TV, and my personal favorite, YouTube, all pre-cleared.
And if you are interested in a free month of a MusicBed wedding subscription, head over to howtofilmweddings.com/musicbed. When you sign up, use the promo code HTFW and you will get your first month for free. The last time that I sat down to edit, I turned everything off. Like in 2 hours, I got like 4 minutes of a 6-minute film like knocked out. In 2 hours, I was like, I am way lazy when I come to editing because I'm so distracted, all the time. So that's great advice. Let's go to another question here. It's Chris Once, and he asks, what systems do you employ to not get bogged down in the tough parts of an edit? So, you're editing along and, stuff just maybe isn't flowing or you don't know what to do. Like, what are some tips or some tricks that you suggest to, get through maybe some tougher parts of an edit?
Sure. One thing I think that really slows down editors and kind of goes back to the last question is it's always really helpful to know what you're working towards with your edit. I think this is something that young filmmakers struggle a lot with. They're still trying to kind of define their style, and you get to the editing room and there's so many choices. It really kind of helps to review your own work. I mean, we do this when we review new client portfolios. We really look at your pacing, your shot selection. Are you using shots of someone looking at the camera, or are they always looking off camera? Those kind of things. Look at your inspiration and look at what you've filmed and see how you can kind of merge the two together. It always helps, again, just to know what you're working towards. And one of the things, if you're doing, if you're going to slow down your edit, maybe you're only going to edit like a couple hours a day. We always say, it's really easy to place your music down first and then place in your sound bites. I think even if you're not doing a chronological edit, no matter really what kind of style edit you're doing, most of us are using the music to help tell an emotion. We're using it to help tell the story. So for us, it's always better to put in those big moments that you know you have to include, or those great shots that you know you want in there, and then work to fill in the rest of the edit around those parts.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I know that changed my editing life when I did a mentorship with Sarah Pendergraph of Penn Weddings a few years ago. She says, the first thing that I always lay down in my edit is when the bride is coming down the aisle.
Yes.
Like I throw that in, I find that emotional part, and that's what I put in first. And then I kind of build everything else around that moment. And whenever I started implementing, okay, I don't have to start at the very beginning and just move forward. I can put in those big moments where where I want them to happen. And that just helps the flowing and, kind of breaks up your edit too. Because if that moment's at, halfway through, then you're kind of like, okay, now I have half of the song, to build up to that moment, and then the rest, to finish it. So that's great advice.
I know that a lot of times, especially in the first few years of editing, I would be like building from the beginning, like this beautiful story, and then realize that like the peak of the song was coming in like it's 16 seconds. Like I have like 3.5 minutes of like just the bride getting ready, and then I'm supposed to cram like chronologically every other bit of the story before the bride coming down the aisle or the kiss into like this 16-second window of time. And so it'd be like this nice slow-paced story, and then just like boom, 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 and then it would look terrible, of course, because it's like it didn't flow at all. And you'd get yourself kind of like you're not even paying attention down the timeline. And so like by doing things like that and getting the things, like I always say, like I try to get all of the non-creative parts out of the way first, like getting everything kind of set where it needs to go. And it's like, I know I want the grand exit to happen here towards the end. I know I want them to be doing the grand entrance right after their kiss. I want the kiss here. Like you start building all that stuff out, and then you can start filling in, and it's much, much easier to get in that flow that way for sure. Okay, I want to jump to Kyle. Do you have something else, Michael? I'm sorry.
Well, I would just say, again, it's all about processes. Come up with a process, and that should help with the tough parts. Set goals for each day, right? Editing typically isn't done in one day. Especially if you're beginning, if you can say, okay, day 1, I'm culling. That's my goal for today. That's all I'm doing. Day 2, I'm going to be finding the music, lay it down, and maybe put some of the sound bites in, right? And then day 3, set yourself small goals, break it down. Editing is overwhelming when you try to take it as a whole. But if you can break down what you want to accomplish each day, and it's only 1 or 2 things, you're much more likely to accomplish it and end the day with a sense of accomplishment, right? Okay, I got those 2 things done, as opposed to saying I got 20 things I need to do. But if you just try to get 1, 2, or 3 done, by the end of the week, you'll have all 20 done. Yeah,
that's really good. And this kind of goes along with Kyle Rainey's question, which is you kind of answered it, but it's on the lines of procrastination. He wrote a small novel in the Facebook group about his new computer with all the specs, and got like all this souped up machine so he could edit better, but still finds himself procrastinating. He says, I'd love to hear about what people do to stay on time, and on top of it, and what delivery times are for people, how you can find a sweet spot. And then he also says he's interested in editing services and would love to hear about how people offload those edits. So part 1 of the question, procrastinating.
Yeah, I'll answer that part, and then Sarah will answer the second. So firstly, I love Kyle's honesty. Right? You invest in all this new hardware, and yet you still find yourself procrastinating. And Kyle, you are not alone. A lot of us are like that. That's how I was. And I think we have to dig deeper to ask ourselves why we're procrastinating, even though we've invested in all of this equipment. And it may just be that editing is not for us, right?
That's a truth bomb right there. That's true.
It is. You have to be honest with yourself. Look, filmmaking in general has a lot, right? It's a team effort, it's collaborative. There is a lot to do. It's hard for one person to do everything. You don't have to edit. You don't. You don't have to shoot. If you don't want to shoot, you can be a wedding film editor these days, right? You can just edit. If you prefer the business aspect of it, start a studio. Focus more on the business, the management, the production management, building out a team. You still love film, but you don't have to do everything. So I think we really need to ask ourselves, if we are finding ourselves procrastinating, why is it happening? Right? In some cases, I'm sure, like with you, John and Nick, you guys may procrastinate because you launched How to Film Weddings and the success came a lot faster than you anticipated. And it's like, what did we get ourselves into? Right? You didn't expect this growth this quickly, right? So it makes sense. But for others of us, if we are procrastinating, again, I'm totally guilty of it. I was in the past when I was a freelance videographer. You have to ask yourself why you're not doing it. And if you don't love it, you're not going to do it. You have to love what you're doing. And luckily, there are a lot of great options on the market. Not just Wedditor. There's a lot of great options, whether you want to hire an in-house editor, just a local freelancer, a remote freelancer, or an editing team, a remote editing team somewhere. There's plenty of options. But just regardless, whether it's editing, it's shooting, whatever it is, ask yourself, do I really love doing this? Perhaps, Kyle, it would help. And I want to be honest with this. What if you had taken that money and invested it into an editor and spent those hours moving forward with other parts of your business that you love, that your productivity is much higher because you're passionate about doing it? Sometimes we need a learning experience. I was there. I purchased film equipment before. I purchased, for me, a few years ago, the A6500. I thought I would shoot more. This was pre-Wedditor. No, it just sat there. It's collecting dust. Haven't used it.
Yeah, I think too that like getting really honest with yourself, we talk about that a lot on this podcast, is like there's no, like a lot of us try to really impress other wedding filmmakers instead of trying to really blow away our brides and grooms. And so like if you do find yourself procrastinating or not wanting to go shoot or not wanting, there's nothing wrong with that. I know several people that run really successful businesses that make a ton of money doing weddings, but they rarely ever shoot. Or just the opposite. And so, I felt guilty almost to have Wedditor do a few of my edits. But then after watching the films, it's like, this is just as good if I would have done it. And I was able to focus on the things that I get really, really excited to do. And so like it was this freedom that I have now where I just feel like, oh my goodness, how much more money could I make now doing the things that I love the most, And so, I still love to edit and I'm still editing, but like whenever you get to this point where you have 20 wedding films to edit, you just filmed the one that you really want to edit, but you can't do it for 4 months. It's like, oh my goodness, you kind of feel like you're in debt to yourself almost, like you've been paid for the wedding. You're not making any more money for doing this edit, but now you owe them this edit. And so like I would get in this place of like, oh my goodness, like I have to do this. And whenever I feel like I just have to do something, that's when I start to hate doing that thing.
Exactly.
It feels like work. And I don't, this for me, the freedom that I get to do by running my own company, that's what that's my why in my business is I want to have freedom to go to my daughter's, football cheerleading game or whatever it is. And like the editing, I would always feel so bogged down. So if you're listening and you would feel guilty to have somebody edit your films, I would encourage you to not. Like if that's not something that you're in love with or shooting or running the business or whatever it is, like there are people that can do that these days. So great answer, Michael. Yeah. And great answer.
I would like to give a little bit of a personal background with me because that's what I found happening. I was working as a creative director at a startup in San Francisco, and our CEO shut us down unexpectedly. We were doing food photography. I was managing all the photographers and the restaurants and so forth. And I had just made a commitment with my wife to let her go to school for a university for a year, a specialized course in San Diego County. And 2 months before we're leaving, just as I was going to tell the CEO about working remotely, and I had before, I've done a lot of remote work, which is why I feel comfortable with Wedditor and how we operate our business, but he shuts us down. So all of a sudden I'm moving to San Diego, committed to letting my wife go to this course where she's not going to be working and I have no job. And so I had to go back to doing freelance videography, shooting small businesses, just any gigs I could get, just with freelance videography. And I found that the passion I had once had for it, because I used to have a video production company for 5 years. I freelanced in the Silicon Valley for a number of years before becoming the creative director, but that passion was gone. And I found myself on set, working with whether it was a small business or a medical facility or whatever, just not giving my all. And then your work does start to suffer. And then the clients come back and they're not fully happy with it, because you didn't invest everything, it wasn't made with love. And I was like, okay, I need to do something else. And that, along with getting married about that time and seeing our wedding video and everything, is what led to Wedditor. But I had that feeling that just me doing production, the love was gone. Yeah. So I transitioned, and I studied cinematography. That was my specialization, but I was always attracted to producing. and production management and having the video company running, managing the business and so forth.
Yeah.
So this is what I do. And, Sarah does the day-to-day operation. She oversees all the day-to-day operations, and that's what she loves doing. And so I think this is one reason we work so well.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely finding some, like, your passion, what you love doing, and then really doubling down on that. It's kind of like what we're hearing here is like, don't spend all of your time. I mean, it might not be in the cards for you to hire somebody to do this yet, but like, as long as you're becoming self-aware that like, this is not something I love to do, it's okay. So
yes. Self-aware, pay attention to your feelings inside. Sometimes it takes time to admit to yourself, right, that I don't love this. Yeah.
Second half of Kyle's question, he's just asking, he's also interested, I think this is, obvious because he is procrastinating on these things. He's like interested in somebody editing, for him. So Sarah, tell us a little bit, he's interested, would love to hear about how people offload edits and still keep their creative touch. Because I think that's a big fear that we have is like, you're going to make something that looks nothing like what we do.
Sure. A large part of what we do when we work with new clients is we try to help them articulate what it is about their style that sets them apart. I think there's a tendency in the community to kind of overuse certain terms. Like we hear the word cinematic and documentary, and I don't want something to be cheesy, but all of that might sound good to a couple, but to filmmakers that doesn't really mean a whole lot. That can mean so many things. So we try to look at your style, watch your own work, pick your favorite film, watch it once, watch it again, turn off the sound, pay attention to what shot sizes you're using, look at your composition. What were your favorite shots and why do you think that was? Do you love having lots of motion, or sometimes do you hate, like maybe you did that artificial kind of scale up on a clip and you're like, actually with the sound off, that doesn't really look good. Think about all those things and then watch it one more time and just really pay attention to your audio. Do you like the music you're using? What kind of music do you like using? Do you like your sound bites? Audio quality can be kind of hit or miss, but maybe something like incorporating sound from the camera would really help enhance your edits and really bring people into your edit more. And those are actionable items that when you're talking to someone, an editor or an or an outsourcing company, those are things that we can understand and translate into that first project together.
Yeah, really good. I thought of the thing that I wanted to say at the beginning just now as you were talking. It came back. I knew it would. But that was one of the things that I really appreciated about Wedditor was whenever you say, okay, we're going to work together, you send over like this, 10-page questionnaire, Google Doc. It takes you a little bit to fill out, but I was like, man, it's going to take me some time. However, like that's the kind of information that's super valuable in them figuring out your style and figuring out how you work and figuring out what's important to you. And, just that extra step of learning more about, the filmmaker. And I'm sure that you also use that information, to pair, me up with the right editor and, all of that kind of stuff. Cause I'm sure there's some that like to be more funky with their edits and some that like to be more, straightforward and traditional with their edits. And, they work better that way. So, I really, that was the thing I was getting. I really appreciate that side of thing. And it's not just one email that says, this is kind of the stuff that I'm looking for. Here's a film, watch it, like that. So taking that time to learn what we do and try to emulate our style very, very closely. All that's super impressive.
Yeah, we tend to, as creatives, I think we all tend to think that we edit by our feelings, by our heart, like this feels right. But really, if you do break it down and do look at it, there are choices that you make. Even something as simple as, do I fade up this title or do I just hit it on the beat? That's a big choice, and that will change the style quite a bit. So yeah, it can be done. Really analyze yourself, get a cup of coffee, choose your favorite films, and really look at how those came together, especially with pacing and music.
I'll say that I have, since having Wedditor do 4 of my films, the first one I'm like, why don't I I as an editor, you just do what feels right. And like what you're saying, Sarah, is like, it actually is pretty easy to communicate if you just stop for a second, rewind your film, watch, and explain why you like that. Nick talked about it's hard, to communicate what he's feeling about something. And I think that's just a curse of the dude for most of us, where it's like, I know what I want it to do, but I can't and so like doing a few of these weddings, at the first I was like, that's weird. That doesn't feel right. That's weird. And then you guys would be like, okay, well, what's weird about it? And it's like, well, it just hit, like the moment didn't breathe. And then I realized about my edits, I'm like, I like to let moments breathe. I don't want them to, and I didn't even know that about myself or my edits until working with you guys. And so, Kyle, on your question, it's actually been like, it's helped me edit my own films better, having them just kind of be part of my team, because like I'm understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing even better.
So tell me, what CRM do you use? If you're not sure or you don't know what a CRM is, I'm about to save you a lot of time and therefore money. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. Basically, a CRM is an online service that helps you better serve your clients. HoneyBook is both mine and John's CRM of choice. We absolutely love it. HoneyBook allows us to do all of our correspondence, contracts, and payments all in one place. One of the features that I love is the automated workflow. We all have emails that we send out to all of our clients, right? At 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, the week of. All of us do it. Automated workflows make it so that those emails can go out automatically. Since I don't have to take time to, 1, remember to send them out, and 2, to write them, I save time and make more money by working more efficiently. Are you interested in saving time on the business side of things? Go to howtofilmweddings.com/honeybook for a free 1-week trial. Also, because the Honeybooks really like me and John, we can give you $200 off of your first year, and that also comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Go to howtofilmweddings.com/honeybook to start saving lots of time in your business. Oh yeah, legally I have to tell you that John and I are affiliates of HoneyBook.
Let's go jump into another question. And Joa Pedro Reese and also Ben Holton, I think that these questions are very similar, so I'll kind of combine them. But Joao, is that how you would say that, John? I don't know.
I'd call him Joe. I'd probably say Joe.
Okay, Joe. But sorry, Joe. That's what I'm gonna say. Okay, when sending work to Wedditor, what do you want from the videographer? Like, how do we send the files over? How do you get information about the couple? That kind of thing. And then Ben Holton's was, what's the workflow like? Do people send you a hard drive? Do you upload digitally? And then the files that come back? What do we get back? And he also asked about, what do you do with music? How do you handle the music licensing and all that stuff? So I thought those two kind of fit well together. So I'll let you guys take off and talk about what you guys do with those.
Go for it, Michael.
Okay.
It's like 5 questions, Michael.
Yes.
It was. You got
15
it all.
minutes.
You got it all.
I have the question right here, so I'm just looking it over one more time. I think that I'm going to answer this generally in terms of the workflow process, because I think it's pretty similar it's pretty similar if you're working with a remote team, whether it's a company or whether it's a freelancer, right? You pretty much have 2 options as to how to get the footage over. You're either going to mail a hard drive to that person physically, the old-fashioned way, or you're going to upload to the cloud, right? Whether it's Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever. Those probably are the 2 that are most commonly used. So that's how you're going to get the footage over. We personally have a whole labeling system that we like to use because we find that it helps keep everything organized. It ensures nothing gets lost in the transfer. And if something does, we can pinpoint pretty quickly which exact file is missing so that neither of us are there scrambling, taking an hour to find the one missing file out of 1,200 files. Nick, as you talked about, we have a whole brief that we have everybody fill out, client brief, project brief, all of this stuff. But the point is, regardless of if you're working with an editor, even if they're an in-house editor, you have to communicate with them. You have to give them as much information as you possibly can. The more detailed you are, the better. And yes, it does take time to do. We have one client, and they're a high-volume studio. And they are the most organized wedding film studio I have ever seen in my life. It is incredible what they do. I don't want to scare anybody off with this, but they shoot 175 weddings a year, quality, right? Beautiful mix of classic with a few little modern touches. But it's quality. And the fact that they work
incredible.
with over 20 filmmakers and they make this work, I think this weekend alone, they're shooting about 11 weddings. But anyway, out of all of our filmmakers, from the solo to the auteur to the boutique studio to the high volume studio, nobody provides as much detailed information about the wedding that they're uploading than they do. You should see the notes that they provide. I mean, they're just phenomenal. And it's by the post-production coordinator, who she is on maybe one of every 20 shoots. But typically she's not there, but they've created this entire process where they give us all these detailed notes, letting us know important moments that we may overlook, right? We weren't on set. We may not know that, I don't know, the earrings that the bride is wearing are from her great grandma. And if we see a close-up of an earring shot, we may most of the time not use it. But if you tell us that, we'll know to put it in. She'll occasionally tell us specific shots. It's like file names even, like use this shot, I love this about it. She provides information that was gathered from the couple as to what's important to them. You know, other things we may not know is sometimes we had one film that we did not from them, but we had one film where the dad was terminally ill. Father of the bride was terminally ill. We would not have known that. He did not look terminally ill. But because of that, they wanted us to base the story more around him, right? Or the bride was raised by grandma and grandpa, so she's very, very close with them. We need to include more of them than typically maybe one or two shots, right, that you would of grandma or grandpa. Things like that. The more information you can provide, the better for us. Because again, otherwise, if it's not organized, whoever your editor is, if it's not organized and there's 20 Zoom files, you know, audio files labeled Zoom 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, and you know, you've got different channels on the left and right going in and the editor opens it, it's going to take them 30 minutes to figure out what's what. They want to open it, they want to have an idea of what they're looking at, and they want to be able to start editing.
Yeah.
Okay, so regardless of who you're working with, as much information as you can provide. Then it's the editing process. Yes, it's a collaborative process, but you know, once we get all that information, we'll let you know if there's anything else we need any clarifications. Edit, you know, do whatever you need to do while we edit. We provide the film back to you. We use both Frame.io and Vimeo's review page for reviewing, depending on the client. Volume clients, Vimeo review tends to be enough, because when you're a high volume client, there is a good enough, right? John, they don't have the time to sit there like you do and make sure every little detail is perfect, which is fine.
Right.
We get it. It's like two different markets. It's fine. We get it. They just simply don't when you're shooting 175 weddings a year. So anyway, we use those two to review, and then you get the assets back. Revisions are included, of course, if needed. So that's kind of the workflow. It's pretty simple, but it's in between projects. It's when you get each version, when you get V1 or V2, that's when we need that collaborative process, right? That's when, okay, let us know, speak up, tell us what's working and what's not, because we will get there, but it takes time. So yeah, that's kind of the process. Sarah, yes?
I was going to add to the first video that you guys sent me. You said watch it through the whole way first before making any changes, or before just watch it through. And I think that changed my whole mindset.
So important,
because I didn't stop it. You know, it made such a big difference. And then just the way that we upload it and file it. You know, it took a minute to learn how I wanted, like how you guys wanted everything, but like it saves so much time in the long run because you guys know you have all the clips and you guys know all the things. So yeah, that made a big difference to me. Just like every time I get a film, I watch the whole thing through first before making any type of change.
So important. So important. Again, it doesn't matter if anybody else, I mean, you should do that even if you're editing your own work, but especially if you're working with an editor and you're seeing it for the first time, especially if it's the first time you've ever had somebody else edit your work, you have to watch it all the way through because of pacing, flow, rhythm, tempo, all of that. You have to see the big picture first, and then you can go back and hone in and start and stop and leave comments.
And I wanted to add into, yes, of course, we want your production notes from the day of. We want to know what you're recording, if you had your second shooter, if we can expect 4K, all of those things. We also do want to know about the couple, as Michael said, but we don't want you to just copy and paste the same questionnaire that you had the couple filled out, sent to us. We want to know your take. We want your honest feedback on the vibe you felt the couple was giving off. If you really love the shot and you know that you want that in there, be very clear about that. You know, almost talk to everyone like they're five. Like, be very specific. Don't leave any room for interpretation. But yeah, you're not a robot filmmaker. We're not robot editors. We love seeing and hearing kind of your perspective on the day. That really helps guide us and make different creative choices for every single film. And that's how they stay feeling different and not just like a formula.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. So,
sorry, go ahead, Nick.
well, no, you could go continue.
We have
continue.
it just brings to mind one project we got where the filmmaker actually said, like, this bride seemed so depressed. She never smiled. She refused to do a photo shoot. I don't even know why she's getting married. That's what they told us in the notes. But it really helps the editor going in to know what the expectations are and how we can go about it. And it's probably better that we're actually editing it than she is, because she's going to bring all those biases where maybe this was a client she shouldn't have taken, right? I know every filmmaker turns down clients, and you should if you don't feel that fit. Maybe she should have done that, but the fact that we are editing it, probably we're going to see it more objectively. We don't know her. We're going to make it as good as we can. But give us as much information as you can about the couple.
I was going to just say, by doing this with you all, I've started, I'm still editing some of my films and then sending some of my films to you. And like, before I get going on an edit, I almost ask myself all of these same questions. And so like, if you're a filmmaker out there and you're not even looking to hire somebody to help you with editing, I would encourage you that, like, we started doing this like right after the wedding or the Monday after the wedding, is just to do a brain dump of what the weekend was like. Did anybody stand out to you? Did any moment stand out to you? Because if you don't edit it for even 2 or 3 weeks, it's not fresh on your mind. So like, we just have a little doc on a Google Doc with us where it's just like notes, things that went right, things that might have gone wrong, those kinds of details. And so like, by thinking through that way, not what the questionnaire says, like Michael's saying, but like what really, what really happened. That kind of stuff will really change the way that you go into your edits on your wedding films.
Yeah, that's really good. And as Michael was talking about through all that stuff, and Sarah was saying those things, I think it just shows you also the importance of having the couple fill out a wedding day questionnaire and just, talking about their story and the things that are special to them. So if you're not using one of those, you should be using one for our edits. And, we do sell one in our digital shop if you're looking for one.
Where's that?
We do.
What's
it's
that?
just at howtofilmweddings.com. So,
perfect. That worked out well.
I wanted to go ahead.
Can I say one last thing? Yes. So staying organized and efficient in the editing room begins in pre-production, right? For everybody talking 100%. About the tough moments, how do you be more efficient editing? It starts in pre-production. It starts with those questionnaires, extracting all that information, so you go into the shoot feeling confident and you get the best material, and then you're going to feel better in the editing room.
So good.
That's great. Yeah, a guy in town that I know that does commercial stuff, he's told me several times, like, I could never do what you do because, like, the wedding, there doesn't seem to be much pre-production. But, like, he's like, the least stressful part of me is, like, showing up and shooting because I have it all mapped out and I know exactly what I'm going to do. So, yeah, pre-production definitely helps. I want to get you guys' take, and I didn't realize this, but both Ben Holden and Daniel Yates asked kind of, what's your process with music licensing? Are we responsible for picking that? Do you guys do that? How do you handle that, or how do you recommend if you're wanting to outsource, when it comes to music?
It totally depends. If you would prefer that, like company like Wedditor, if you prefer that we find the music, we can totally do that. A lot of times when you're starting out with an outsourcing company, you're working with someone new, it's a little more helpful to either provide that music or at least have some kind of curated down playlist for the editor to work from. So that way they're not going out and like picking something totally out of left field for your edits and then have to go back and redo all of that work just because the song didn't quite make sense. So yes, we can choose the music, but even we will send music back the first couple projects for approval to make sure that that is the right direction. That is what you were kind of thinking and feeling for that particular couple. And then for licensing, we handle that. We can license music through MusicBed on behalf, I think, because it goes by project, not necessarily by owner.
Yeah, when you actually download the licensing form, there are sections where you can manually enter the filmmaker that it's for, the film production company that it's for, when you are a Wedditor type of company, when you're an editing company. So it can be done.
Yeah. Okay. And I've had a couple of times where I was like, the song right here doesn't, I even sent the song to them and like, this is the song I want. And then I see the edit and I'm like, it's just not doing what I want it to do here. And they're like, thanks for wasting our time. What about this song? But they're very nice about it, you know, and it's like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, we never know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, you never know. Sometimes it's going to happen. Yes, if we do have to change a song after V1, there is a change fee. If we're realigning the edit to the beat, the rhythm, the tempo, the crescendos of the new song. But the first time that happens, it's free. We waive that fee.
I've only had to do that once.
Yes.
No,
it happens every so often.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I've really found to be awesome. Like, you know, whenever we were considering bringing you guys on as part of our team, and that's how I look at it, you were like, let us do one just to show you. It's not going to be perfect. Like, you didn't sugarcoat it and say, we've got this, we'll make it exactly the same as you. So, like, I went in with the proper expectation, knowing, okay, if this is like 60% as good as what I would do, I'm like, you know, it's kind of how I felt. And then I watched the first time and was like, I know I had a lot of changes, but like, it felt like me at the beginning, you know, it still felt like me. And so like now the fourth one in or whatever, it's just like, I told my wife the other night, I was like, that's like I would have edited it. It had like small things that I was like, I don't love the way their lips look at the end of that kiss. You know, it's not like that doesn't feel, that's way weird. Like, I'm not saying that's weird anymore, or hey, add a sound effect of some birds chirping here, or what. It's like, it feels like you guys are in the room next door and you work for me or with me. And so like, it's really been, like, it's really changed my life. So anyway, I don't want to get all like weird about it, but that's the truth.
There is an onboarding process. There's always an onboarding process. It doesn't matter. If you're hiring a second shooter, there's an onboarding process. That second shooter's first job is not going to be exactly the way that you want them to shoot, right? You're going to need, you review their footage or just keep them working and hope to see progress. And you typically, maybe after about 5 films, that second shooter is now going to feel comfortable. They're like, okay, now I know how Nick wants me to shoot. Now I can see it from Nick's eyes. But there's the onboarding process of hiring anybody. Even if a CEO of a major company takes over a new company, there is an onboarding process. It simply takes time. There cannot be that expectation that V1 of Project 1 is going to be 100% perfect. Does it happen sometimes? Yes, it does. But most of the time it doesn't. It's going to take a number of films. So just remember that. Regardless of who you're working with, there is an onboarding process. It's a collaborative process. It involves both parties help to make sure that the partnership is successful. And again, the foundations are transparency and communication.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing John and I have said a ton on this podcast is that consistency compounds. And so if you're just, I think where maybe some of us have been burned in the past with our editors is we use them once and we're like, oh, they didn't do what I wanted, that's no good, and then never go back to them. And so, the same kind of thing as we're talking about, social media, John and I talk about YouTube a lot, and like, hey, YouTube is only going to work if you consistently go back and continue to use it. You upload one video and no one saw it, so now I'm not going to use it anymore. It's that same kind of thing. If you want this, if you want, your outsourcing company to be what you want, you need to continue to use them and continue to, use that, talking to them. I know, Michael, when we talked initially, you're like, our goal is, by, film 3, for us to like have your style down, but it's going to take us a couple to get there. So, really. I'm just reiterating your point. It's
but it does compound, and in the opposite direction as well. And John really did leave 180 comments on the first project. That is by far the most. Typically, it's a quarter of that on a new client, but that's okay. By project 2, it halved to 90. By project 3, we went down to 60. By project 4, I think we went down. What was it? I think you said about 40. So you can see. Give us a couple more. Hopefully, we're going to go down to 30 and 20, and in just a few more projects, we're going to probably get down to 10 or 15 super, super minor little things that it's going to take him a total of 30 minutes of your time. And that's what you want to see. Again, regardless of who you partner with, whether it's Wedditor or somebody else, that's what you want to see. You just need to see. If you see that growth and that progress, you're good. And occasionally there may be a little plateau, or there could be a little bit of a regression. And that's when you need to step in. You need to speak up. The sooner you speak up, it's like, you know what? You sent me 3 films, and these 3 films aren't quite you're missing the mark a little bit more. What happens? let's figure it out. And whoever you work with needs to step up also and say, okay, we're going to look at this, do an analysis, and we will fix it. And if they do, great. Yep. Because again, success, right? Even with How to Film Weddings, I'm sure you guys have had setbacks as well. Success is not just a straight line up. Over time it is, but it's nice. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Yep. And then over time it goes up. It's the same way with any partnership.
Yeah. The thing I love about, communicating with you guys, and as we're wrapping up and hitting our hour here, like the communication side of things has never felt salesy or spammy. It has always felt natural and like you care what we have to say. Inside of our group, both of you guys are inside of the Facebook group and answering questions, and I love that too. And like if you do have questions for Wedditor or Michael or Sarah, we'll tag them obviously in this video, but like they're becoming more involved in our community and answering questions. And so this is again not just a hey, you should use Wedditor, but like we really just want to up the entire wedding industry and help people to do things that they love. And so like I really do appreciate you guys taking the time. This is your time. I know you're busy and you're jumping on here and talking with us. So that's super awesome.
It's our pleasure to do that. And yes, we are available. Everybody who fills out the inquiry form is getting a personal response from me. There has been a slight delay. I did really end up with getting bronchitis right after this started, so that knocked me out for a while.
Why'd you do that?
Well, you have 2 kids under 2. It's hard not to get sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the time. So, but yes, there's 4,000 people in the Facebook group. We can't work with all 4,000. Let's be honest. Our editing team is not that big. Okay, we can't work with 4,000 filmmakers that each shoot 20 weddings a year. But everybody who fills out the form has a chance to book a 30-minute call with me. And for example, there was one person that I spoke with, and she had just shot her first wedding, wasn't even sure she wanted to move forward with weddings, said she was really struggling with time shifting. And we have an internal video about time shifting that we use to help our editors. And I shared it with her. It was actually the first time I ever shared it with somebody outside of the team. And, she wrote back saying, thank you so much. This is awesome. So we are trying to find ways to help. If you do get on the phone with me, I'm willing to answer any of your questions that you have, even if it's not about Wedditor, it's just about editing like this. I'm happy to do it. Again, we can't edit for 4,000 people. There are other options on the market as well. There's plenty of room for everybody, right? Just like there's a lot of filmmakers in both of your markets, and you guys are still out there helping them. We're doing the same. We want to be doing the same thing. Yeah. And I do also want to say one last thing, and that is that at Wedditor, we are interested in working with people from all segments of the market. We are not just looking for the Wild Oak Films and the Redeem Productions. So I want to make that clear to everybody, right?
That's good.
Internally, we call you guys the auteurs, for lack of a better word. We can't have all of our clients giving us 180 revisions on V1, right? It would take a lot of time.
They have a dartboard with my face on it.
No, we love working with you, John. We really do. But we like working with high volume studios as well. It's like it's running almost a separate business. It's a totally different ball game. And for us internally, we consider high volume 40 plus films a year. And then we love working with more boutique studios or solo filmmakers that are shooting more in the 15 to 20 range, even if you're just starting out or you're a couple years in. So, we want every segment of the market. We're not just looking for, the top, the top 1% or something.
Yeah, that's good.
So don't be afraid to write
Tell us where people can, I'm sorry, it's glitching a little on me there. Tell us where people can find you and tell them about the How to Film Weddings promo.
So howtofilmweddings.com/Wedditor. That's where you can find us. We have a webpage, wedditor.com. We haven't had to update it in a very long time, but we will be doing so probably in the off-season or the low season for us. And then our most recent films are on our Vimeo portfolio, vimeo.com/Wedditor.
And we have an Instagram. We are Wedditor.
And we now have an Instagram, yes. And yes, there is, not only do you get for anybody who fills out our inquiry form via our website, there's always 10% off the first project. But if you are coming to us from How to Film Weddings, the promo code is HTWF. Or HTFW.
How to wedding film.
How to HTFW. Add that in, you get an additional $50 off.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I know.
And going back, John, you said one thing in the beginning, and I have to say, because it's a pet peeve of mine, I hate interruption marketing. And this is why we will never cold call any filmmaker. It's why we never have, and we absolutely never will. Interruption marketing, I hate it. It doesn't work. We'll never do it.
Yeah, love that. Love everything about what you guys are doing. You know, if you're listening to this podcast, you know, definitely check out Wedditor. Even if you don't plan on having somebody do anything for you for the next bit, just stay in touch with Michael and Sarah in our group. You know, this is great information. We're going to have you guys back on soon, I think next month, just to answer more questions from people about editing and different things like that. So we're going to have you guys around more, and so we're all going to get very familiar with you. But thank you so much for your time. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to that channel. Podcast, all those things. We love the reviews. And I mean, Nick, the landing the plane's the fun part, but I think that I'm done with the podcast for now. So to everybody out there, thank you so much for being a part of this community. And until next time, we'll see ya.
See ya.
See ya.